Blake Thompson always arrived the way weather arrived, without drama, without permission, and exactly when it was needed. That was the reputation of couriers like him. In an age when most messages became light and slipped through relays and encryption nets, there were still things that refused to be digits: sealed artifacts, handwritten oaths, heirlooms with legal weight, and information too dangerous to risk in a packet stream. Blake carried those things, carefully, quietly, as if the universe might crumble if he jostled them. Being a courier required him to be part spy, part martial artist, and part diplomat. That he was human, from a do-not-approach world, helped with some of his roles and encumbered others. But Blake liked his work and had dreams of going solo someday, starting his own courier agency. From the viewing gallery of the Galactic Federation station in orbit, the planet below looked like a coin found on the road, worn, dulled, and pitted. Its atmosphere had thinned into a tired veil. Its seas were memories, its forests long turned to mineral scars. Even the sunlight seemed hesitant as it touched the surface. Blake watched it and felt, briefly, the familiar pinch of being human, curiosity braided with caution. Earth had taught him both. A station attendant guided him to the surface transfer bay. The attendant read Blake's trip manifest. "Courier Thompson, your delivery is for Dr. Robinthan. Camp Mutual, planetary surface." Blake lifted the small case, palm-sized and sealed with Federation and local authority tags. "That's me." The attendant offered the faintest smile. "Camp Mutual is mobile. You'll want to check their position on approach." "I've chased moving targets before," Blake said, and meant it in several ways. A hum rose as the matter beam array warmed. The world around him softened, not blurred, exactly, but translated. The transporter technicians called it conversion, transmission, reconstitution. Blake always thought of it as being politely disassembled by physics and asked to trust that everything would be put back in the right order. He stepped onto the pad. Light threaded up around him in a clean column, a pale lattice like a net woven from soundless music. Then Eclipse, close and cold, was under his boots. The air in Camp Mutual's arrival zone tasted of metal and filtered dust. Above, a vast dome of shielding flexed like a faint shimmer against the weak sky. Beyond the landing field, the mobile town stretched wide, layered habitats, labs, greenhouses, a ring of defensive emplacements, and the slow, constant pulse of repulsors holding everything aloft. 15,000 people, moving with a purpose that felt almost stubborn. Blake picked up a rental authorization and was led to his ground vehicle, a tiny, one-person crawler with an honest little engine and an interface that blinked like it had opinions. He tossed his bag into the rear compartment, checked the case, and settled into the seat. "Destination?" The interface chirped. "Dr. Robinthan," Blake said. "Dr. Robinthan is currently registered in Ruins Sector 17, it replied, as if pleased to be right. The crawler hissed out of Camp Mutual's perimeter, and the world turned to gray. Eclipse's surface was a museum of loss. Ruins rose in fractured lines. Arches snapped mid-span. Roads that went nowhere, towers collapsed into elegant heaps. Somewhere in those shapes, a civilization had once decided it would rather bury a thing than face it. Blake drove for an hour across hardpan and scattered stone. The lower gravity made the crawler feel lighter than it had any right to, skimming over terrain with unexpected ease. The ruins sprawled across the ashen plain like the bones of a fallen giant civilization, their shattered towers and broken arches half buried in fine gray dust. Surfaces that had once been smooth and elegant were now scoured by centuries of wind, etched with strange geometric patterns that seemed both artistic and mathematical. Even in decay, the structures radiated a quiet sense of precision, as if they had been designed by a people who valued order above all else. He found Dr. Robinthan where the ruin map said he would be, a man in an environment suit, kneeling near an exposed section of ancient plating. His posture had the excited tension of someone standing on the edge of a discovery. The vault was embedded deep within a collapsed wall, its seamless metallic surface unmarred by time, corrosion, or impact. Faint lines of dormant circuitry traced across it like frozen lightning, converging at a narrow keyway that glowed softly when approached. It gave the unsettling impression of something not abandoned, but deliberately sealed, waiting for the precise moment it would be opened again. He looked up as Blake approached, face visible behind a clear visor. Courier. Blake held up the sealed case. Blake Thompson. Delivery for Dr. Robinthan. Robinthan's gloved hands hovered a moment, like he was afraid to touch what he'd been waiting for. Then he took the case, input his credentials, and broke the seal with a tone that sounded too cheerful for a dead planet. Inside lay a key. Not a key in the old, quaint sense of teeth and tumblers, but a piece of engineering that still carried the elegance of intention, an oblong shard of dark alloy, inlaid with faintly luminous threads that looked like frozen lightning. Robinthan exhaled something like a laugh. "You have no idea," he breathed, "what this is." Blake's instincts stirred. "I deliver." "I don't know." Robinthan barely heard him. He stepped toward an ancient door set into the ruined wall, a seam barely visible until the key came near. The threads in the key brightened. The seam responded with a low, resonant click that Blake felt in his bones. The vault opened. For half a heartbeat, nothing happened. The door simply slid aside. Dust sighed out like an old secret. Then the world began to scream. A wave of motion spilled out, small bodies at first, then dozens, then hundreds. Construction robots. They were not the gleaming servants of a thriving society. They were utilitarian shapes with harsh edges, welding arms, cutting blades, grappling appendages, grinding wheels, and torch nozzles. Their chassis bore ancient maker marks worn down to ghosts. They burst from the vault as if they'd been waiting, hungry. Dr. Robinthan didn't even have time to shout. One robot struck him with a rotating arm, and he went down, suit rupturing, body ragdolled against stone. Another followed like an afterthought. A third, as if ensuring the instruction was complete. Blake froze for exactly the length of one breath. Because even humans who grew up on DNA worlds still sometimes need a second to accept that this is real. Then he moved. He turned and sprinted, legs pumping, heart hammering. Behind him, the robots tore into the ruins with violent purpose. Ancient masonry became granular dust under blades and grinders. Statues became sand. Walls became powder. The robots, thousands of years old, resumed where they left off. In a now lost-to-time moment, the builder robots had been set to destroy. Released from their prison storage, they picked up where they left off all those centuries ago. The robots kept coming out of the vault. It was either the biggest vault ever, or some storage technology that the Galactic Federation did not possess. And then the swarm oriented, not randomly, not mindlessly, but with a dreadful coordination, toward Camp Mutual. Blake's crawler was a bright, ridiculous little dot in a ruined landscape. He reached it, threw himself into the seat, and slammed the engage control. Before the engine could answer, a voice cut across the ruined field. Sharp, controlled, strained by the one emotion the Astery rarely displayed in full: fear. "Stop!" Blake looked up. Kitty Smoke stood in the open, silver-tinted skin visible where her travel cloak had fallen back. Her face was symmetrical in that uncanny Astery way, beautiful enough to make most humans forget their thoughts. Yet right now her composure was cracked. Blake's heart skipped a beat. "Then, what are you doing out here?" "With children." Behind her, 2 children, one boy, one girl, maybe 9 years old by human standards, stared wide-eyed at the horizon where the dust cloud of homicidal robots rose like a storm. "Human," she said, and the word wasn't dismissive. It was assessing as she took him in. Her mind snapped back to the situation. "My charges." "They ran." "I pursued." Blake's gaze snapped to the dust cloud. It was closing. Fast. It was a stupid question, given the situation. "Get in," he said. Kitty hesitated only long enough to scoop the children with practiced urgency and shove them toward the crawler's rear seat. She climbed in after them, folding herself into a space built for one. The interface blinked once, as if offended. "Warning," it chirped. "Mass overload. Engine lockout." Blake hit the control again. Nothing. He tried a third time, because denial is a form of hope. Still nothing. The robots were nearer now. Individual shapes separated from the cloud, glinting with blades and torches. The sound of them was wrong, like an insect swarm, but made of metal and intent. Kitty's eyes locked on Blake. "One must exit," she said, voice steady as a compass. "It will be me. This is my failure." Blake shook his head. "No. It is logical," she insisted. Her hands were clenched, knuckles pale beneath silver skin. "They are the governor's children. Their survival outweighs mine. I will not allow. Blake leaned in, his face close enough that she could see the stubbornness that Earth grew in people the way forests grew on kinder planets. I couldn't live with myself, he said, and his voice held no heroics, only truth. Not like that. Then he did something that would have seemed insane to most of the Federation. He got out. The interface immediately chirped, mass within limits. Engine ready. Kitty's breath hitched. Human. Blake reached in and pressed the engage button, hard and final. The crawler lurched forward, repulsors whining, and shot away across the flats. Dust clouds kicked up behind the crawler, seemed to be following the vehicle. Kitty twisted in her seat, one hand pressed to the rear window, as if she could hold him there by will alone. Her face remained composed. Astery training, Astery design, but her eyes were not. Her eyes were human in that moment, wide, helpless, refusing to look away. Blake watched the crawler disappear into distance and felt a strange calm settle over him. Camp Mutual, far off, was moving, an immense town on repulsors, shifting away like a mountain deciding to walk. Someone had sounded the alarm. Someone had done the right thing. The alarm was out about the alien robots. The robots came for him. A silver-black cloud of motion, an angry hive camouflaged in a dust storm. Too many to count. Blake turned and ran. Eclipse had low gravity. To most species, it was a mercy. To a man raised on a world-flag DNA, do not approach, it was an unfair advantage. Blake's legs ate ground. His strides lengthened. He vaulted broken stone with ease that felt, for a moment, like flying. Behind him the swarm pursued, blades whining, torches flaring. They were fast, faster than something built for construction should be, but they were built for a heavier world. Their traction faltered on loose dust. They gained, but not quickly enough. Blake angled away from Camp Mutual. If he pulled the robots away for long enough, the lumbering Camp Mutual would have time to work up enough speed to get away from the robots. His lungs burned. His heart pounded like a drum calling an army that was only one man. Blake ran. The robots began to split into two groups. A portion of the swarm peeled off, redirecting toward the moving town. Their logic was cold and efficient. Divide, overwhelm, destroy. Blake saw it, and his stomach tightened. No, he whispered, though there was no one to hear him but the dead planet. He changed course. He sprinted toward the split, cutting across their path, making himself the louder target. He waved his arms, shouted, kicked up dust, anything to trip their attention heuristics. It worked. The peeled-off pack turned back, rejoining the chase. For a moment Blake felt something close to triumph. Then a robot broke from the swarm, accelerated, and caught him. It lunged with a grappling arm and a spinning blade. Blake pivoted, not with panic but with training, the kind that came from long practice in cramped shipboard gyms, hotel workout rooms, and the occasional dojo. He let the robot commit to its own speed. He stepped inside the arc, caught the arm, and used the machine's momentum as if it were a charging bull. The robot sailed over him. It hit the edge of a broken cliff and tumbled into a ravine, sparks scattering like fireflies in a pit. Blake didn't stop to watch it fall. He couldn't. The swarm was almost on him now. His endurance, human endurance, earth endurance, had been stretched past reason. Pain threaded through his muscles. His body wanted to quit in a dozen ways. He knew the feeling intimately, the moment when survival becomes a negotiation. Blake ran. He ran, pushing through all the messages of his body telling him to knock it off. He scanned the landscape ahead and found salvation in a ruin. An old bridge, half collapsed but still spanning a deep cut in the terrain. Its surface was narrow. Its approach was a funnel. A choke point. Blake ran for it. He reached the bridge and turned, planting his feet on ancient stone. The first robot surged onto the span, blade spinning. Blake met it with bare hands and willpower, catching an arm, twisting, and heaving. In low gravity, leverage was king. The robot toppled over the edge and fell into darkness, its torch sputtering out as it went. Another came, then another. Blake retreated step by step, fighting with a ferocity that surprised even him. He used the bridge's narrowness, forcing them into single approach, turning their strength into clumsiness. He knocked them off with shoulder checks and throws, with sweeping kicks that sent metal bodies tumbling. His knuckles split, his forearms bruised. Heat scorched his sleeve as a welding torch grazed him. He kept moving. Then he saw what the robots had begun to do. Two of them had dropped below the bridge line, clinging to supports. Cutting, grinding, chewing through ancient load-bearing beams with the patient cruelty of machines that did not understand heroism, only objectives. They were going to drop the bridge out from under him. Blake's breath came ragged. His arms felt heavy as stone. He could not outrun them much longer. He could not outfight an endless swarm. Still, he fought. He drove one robot back, shoved another off the edge, and then the world lurched. The bridge shook with a groan that sounded like history breaking. Stone fractured. Metal supports snapped. Blake's stomach fell as the entire span began to collapse. He had time to think one last thought. I hope they make it. And then he plummeted. The ravine rushed up. And then, light. Not sunlight. Not fire. A clean, structured column, the geometry of mercy. The matter beam caught him in midair like a hand catching a falling child. For a heartbeat, he was suspended, every atom politely held in place. The sensation was oddly gentle, like being paused between one moment and the next. Then darkness took him. Later, when Blake woke, he smelled antiseptic and warm recycled air. He blinked at a ceiling panel that hummed faintly with life support. A hospital room. Station standard. His body hurt in a way that told him it had been repaired by people who were very skilled and very annoyed by the condition he'd arrived in. He tried to sit up. Pain protested. A soft pressure field nudged him back. Don't, a voice said. Kitty Smoke stood beside the bed. Up close, her silver-tinted skin carried a subtle sheen, like moonlight on water. Her hair was dark, pulled back neatly. Her posture was perfect, astery poise, but her eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd forgotten to regulate the small human habit of crying. Hey, Blake croaked. You made it. And the little shavers. Kitty's expression did something delicate and unfamiliar. It wavered. Little shavers. She asked. Blake was looking down his arm's tubes. Seams. Brighter skin patches. He had been patched up extensively. He looked up at her. Oh, human terms, sorry. Your charges. He lay back, against a wave of exhaustion. She smiled, reaching down to touch his arm. They are fine. They are telling the story of their harrowing escape, and the story gets more magnificent each time it's told. So human of them, Blake said, grimacing at the pain in his chest from his light laugh. Blake, careful, Kitty said, her hand gentle on his shoulder. You are not ready. Blake met her gaze. You know my name? Kitty's smile was liquid silver. Everyone knows your name, Blake. Blake shrugged and felt it, but tried to hide the spike of pain. I don't know your name. I am Kitty Smoke, she said. How sweet, of the 5th dynasty. The Kitty part is impossible to say for humans. Blake lay back against his bed. Kitty is a beautiful name. It fits you. Kitty stared at him, astonished. That was an incredible, bold, and tactless thing to say in Astery culture. But she felt warmth rising in her chest. A doctor entered, Astery, by the faint silver tint and the stillness. He regarded Blake with a look that was not quite awe, not quite irritation, but certainly respect. Blake Thompson, the doctor said, reading from a display. Your injuries were extensive. Multiple fractures. Tissue tearing. Shock trauma. You survived because we retrieved you quickly, and because the matter stream engaged at precisely the right moment. Blake swallowed. And because I'm from Earth. The doctor inclined his head. Yes, your physiology is remarkable. A legacy of a DNA world. Your recovery will require time. Blake's gaze slid back to Kitty. How long have you been here? Kitty opened her mouth as if to answer in minutes and hours, Astery precision, then seemed to abandon the attempt. Long, she said quietly. Long enough to be told to leave and to refuse. Blake blinked. You refused? Kitty's lips pressed together. Yes. A door chime sounded, and the planetary governor entered, flanked by aides. He was Astery, his presence like an iceberg dressed in formality, beautiful, cold-seeming, impossible to ignore. But when he looked at Blake, something in his face softened. Courier Thompson, he said, voice controlled and deep. You protected my children. Blake managed a tired smile. They're kids. They are my responsibility, the governor replied. And yours, by choice. You placed their lives above your own. Blake shifted, wincing. I did what anyone. No, the governor said, with a gentleness that held weight. Many would have done the logical thing. You did the kind thing. He stepped closer. Camp Mutual was evacuated. Eclipse is now considered a loss. The robots are replicating. A Federation response team is being assembled to determine containment options. Blake's smile faded. So the whole expedition gone. The knowledge may yet be recovered, the governor said. But at a cost we did not anticipate. His eyes flicked to Kitty, warmth there, threaded with concern. My governess carries guilt. My children are better than ever. They discovered that they were courageous in a dangerous situation. They experienced growth and development. But my governess has yet to forgive herself. Kitty's shoulders tightened. Blake spoke before she could. It wasn't just her. The ruins pulled them. Kids hear treasure, and their brains short-circuit. The governor's mouth twitched, an astery approximation of amusement. Perhaps. Regardless, you will be rewarded. I insist. Blake tried to protest. Maybe just cover this hospital bill? I don't need. The governor raised a hand. It is our way. You will respect our culture, yes? Then he turned and left, as if gratitude were a contract he had fulfilled with precision. Later, recovery was not heroic. It was slow, frustrating, and full of tiny humiliations, needing assistance to stand, relearning how to move without pain, waking from nightmares that smelled like dust and burning metal. Kitty was there through it. She brought him water before he asked. She adjusted his blanket with careful hands. She sat with him in silence that was never awkward, only present. Sometimes she read him reports about the Federation's plans for Eclipse, translating bureaucratic language into something he could stomach. Sometimes they walked the station corridors together when he was strong enough, moving past windows that framed the broken planet below like a warning. Blake watched Kitty as they walked. He noticed the little things, how her gaze lingered on families in the common areas, how she paused when the governor's children laughed, as if the sound was precious and alarming. He noticed how she tried to hold her emotions the way Astery did, tidy and contained, but how they leaked through anyway, in her voice when she said his name, in the way her hand hovered near his elbow when he tired. One evening, when the station lights dimmed to their artificial dusk, Blake finally said what had been sitting in his chest like a stone. Kitty, you don't have to keep doing this. She looked at him. Doing what? Being here, he said. I know you feel responsible. I know guilt is a big deal for you. Kitty's eyes widened slightly. You think I remain because of guilt, isn't it? Blake asked gently. Kitty was silent for a long time. The station hum filled the space between them, patient and unjudging. Then Kitty did something that, to an Astery, was dangerously close to unraveling. Her breathing quickened. Her hands trembled, small tremors like seismic activity under a calm surface. I do feel guilt, she said, voice tight. I failed in my duty. I allowed them to run. She swallowed hard, and when she spoke again, the words came faster, less controlled. But guilt is not the only thing. Blake, you are not like the others. Humans are emotional. Yes. Chaotic. Yes. Yet you are kind in a way that does not demand anything in return. Blake's throat tightened. Kitty, I have studied your species, she continued, as if clinging to analysis because it was safe. I know you call this bravery. But bravery is not the accurate term. What is then? Kitty's voice dropped. Love. The word sat between them, startling in its simplicity. Kitty's eyes shone. Her composure cracked, just enough to let the truth through like light through a seam. I want to be with you, she said, and her voice shook as if she had never said such a thing without a script. Not as a duty, not as a calculation, as my choice. Blake felt his own hard answer in a way it hadn't been allowed to for a long time. He reached for her hand. Slowly, carefully, giving her every chance to retreat. Kitty didn't. Her fingers curled around his with a firmness that surprised him. You're sure? He asked, because kindness included asking even when you wanted to believe. Kitty's expression softened into something that looked like peace. Yes. Blake smiled, tired and real. Then I'm sure too. Somewhere down the corridor, the governor's children ran past with a security escort that was trying not to look amused. The girl caught sight of them holding hands and grinned like she'd discovered a new kind of treasure. The boy gave Blake a solemn nod, the way children do when they decide someone has earned a permanent place in their world. Word traveled quickly on a station full of people who'd been evacuated from disaster and were starving for good news. Smiles appeared. Shoulders loosened. Conversations grew warmer. It wasn't that everyone cared about romance, exactly. It was that everyone cared about proof that the universe could still make something gentle out of something terrible. Weeks later, when Blake could walk without the faint limp of healing bone and Kitty's eyes no longer looked haunted, they stood in a private bay where a ship waited. It was, frankly, ridiculous. A sleek yacht with a Federation registry and an Astery-level finish, smooth lines, quiet engines, a hull that drank in light like ink. His dream of being independent come true. The name on its side was freshly painted. Second Chance. Blake laughed when he saw it. The governor has a sense of humor. Kitty tilted her head. You saved 15,000 people. You saved the planetary governor's children. You should know, Blake, that everyone contributed. They all gave what they could. That's a luxury yacht. Yes, but it is also a thank you from grateful people. Blake felt a lump in his throat. They boarded together. As the bay doors opened and the ship eased into open space, Eclipse hung below them like a bruise. Somewhere down there, machines built more machines, and the Federation planned and worried and prepared. The Second Chance was luxurious, true. It also had the heart of a racing boat, with state-of-the-art FDL drives and advanced navigation AI. The courier business looked better than ever. Blake never had to go on commercial travel again. But above it, in the clean dark between stars, two people sat side by side at a wide window. Blake reached for Kitty's hand again, and she took it without hesitation. What now? He asked. Kitty looked out at the starfield, then at him. Beautiful, yes, but more importantly, present. Now, she said, and there was warmth in her voice that would have startled anyone who knew Astery composure. We go where we choose. And the ship, obedient to that simple miracle, turned toward the bright unknown.